Good morning, Monday morning, and I would like to suggest to you we need to cry out to the nation for a really good early years sound processing programme that would take children from 4 through to 7 and make sure by the time they were 7 years old they really could use their own language and they were ready to start learning another language. So I want to take you on my proposal for what we ought to be doing with early years. Great, so this is my suggestion of what we ought to be doing, and we need to really think. We want children to master language. I spent a lot of my weekend looking at our top choral schools, looking at videos of them and listening to their pupils. I was expecting to be able to hear amazingly high quality English from children who are 8 plus. I was actually quite disappointed. I could hear in every single video of choral scholars that some of the children had got problems with their sound processing. So I would say every single child needs to engage in this sort of programme, and we need to be getting every single child to the state where they really do not have any problems with sound processing. It reminds me of Russ Bridges' book on learning a piece of music in his 50s and recalling the problems he'd had as a choral scholar and how he'd had all sorts of coping strategies to get round. That's not good sound processing. We want excellent sound processing. But what you can get from the choral schools and looking at what they're doing with their students is this understanding that sound is complex and it's whole body. Their children are doing lots of body work to get their body to work because your whole body processes sound and produces sound. And if you don't have your whole body working properly, it's not going to work. So all the things I've been going on about, get postural control sorted, get airways and breathing sorted, get to the state children have got a calm heart rate variance. It's all part of sound processing. Make sure the children can midline cross without any strange overflow around their jaw or their shoulders. You want to have a really open body. That's good human development. It supports sound processing. That should be going on at the same time. So they're going to be quite busy between 4 and 7 because humans are, there's a lot of development to be done. It's important we teach children to hold a steady beat. Humans are amazing. They don't need to hear a beat in order to hold a steady beat. But we've got good research out there by companies like Interactive Metronome that have identified 54 beats a minute. And let me just very steady, very calm. It's a steady, calm beat. If a child can beat at that sort of rhythm and keep it going without the beat in the background, they've internalized that sense of calm, steady rhythm. It's a really nice beat that you can maintain the skills you currently have and take on a new one. It's a nice, steady beat at which you can learn skills. And that's important if you're going to be an efficient learner. And learning to clap alone and in pairs is really important. You're bringing your whole body into the experience of rhythm. So we need to get children doing a lot of clapping and a lot of rhythm work, day in, day out, year in, year out, particularly from 4 through to 7, but it ought to continue beyond. Our objective ought to be to make sure that every child can process through their sound processing system and produce through their mouths the sounds of the English language. Sound precedes reading. We shouldn't be flashing phonics cards at people before they can process the sounds. So part of the activities that we're going to be doing through a child's early years ought to be reinforcing the ability to make and produce and hear and process sound. It is really important. There's a very good book called Learn to Sing, Learn to Read by Audrey Wisby, which is really about teaching pitch differentiation. It's a very, very good book and well worth your while investing in. And it basically starts out teaching children one note, and they jump and jump on that note. Then she teaches them 2 notes, and they learn to jump from point A to point B as the note changes. And eventually she works up. The children their pitch identification improves. As their pitch identification improves, she has found that it's an extremely good basis for teaching reading. However, she identifies that there are children who can't do it. And we need to deal with that idea that there are gaps in children's sound processing. I would suggest to you that children ought to be learning poems, rhymes and stories, short stories, not huge, every week, to the point they can recite them. Things like Bear Hunt, things like Each Peach Pear Plum, things like Peepo. Children ought to know them by heart. Room on a Broom. They're fantastic English language resources. They are fantastic because they have the rhythm of English. They have a wide vocabulary. They are delightful. No, I can still recite Beatrix Potter's Peter Rabbit from being very young, and when I recite it, it takes me back to being a happy little child. So daily practice to master language, to build vocabulary, to build a sense of rhythm and pitch, to build an understanding of language through actions. So you want to act these things out. You want to support them with pictures. You're really building understanding. And if you're working on 1 rhyme a week, you can build understanding. And that understanding can be very deep. Most rhymes have a history behind them, and children are interested. And you might not tell them the history this week or next week, it might be a few years up the road, but if you know that all children have covered all rhymes, or a very big library of them, you can start bringing them in. They can start using them later to make cultural references in much more complex English. It's important. It's important that these children develop these skills because you're developing the speaking and reading skills for life. One of the things that used to drive me mad as an A-level teacher was my students could not read a 4-page case study. They could not read for meaning. We have got to get our children to the stage where they really have got broad vocabulary, they really have got a good understanding of what they're hearing, can make sense of that language, so that by the time they go to secondary school, by the time they're 11, they have got the sort of skills in place that make them a super independent learner who can read for meaning, who can make sense of things, who can go and do research independently. But by not doing this work, we are crippling people for life. Having gone through a lot of recordings from schools about children's language this week, and having listened to spoken English from both Britain and around the world, I want to bluntly tell you, if you haven't got really good spoken English, use recordings. Please use recordings of good spoken English. It is disempowering to the children, to their future adults, if they cannot access mainstream spoken English. It is really important. It's important for international trade, it's important for international relations, it's important for community relations, and it is also important that children respect their own language. So we need both working. We don't want the sort of imperialism we had when I was a child, when there were degradations. We need to accept that we all speak one English, which we all understand internationally, and there might be all sorts of Englishes going on at a local level. That's fine. Every culture is worth it, is worth respecting. But we all need to earn a living, we all need to communicate internationally. So let's think of something. So you've got a sort of model for what to do. You've got your munchkins, you're going to teach them pat a cake, and you're going to say it and repeat it with them 1 line at a time. And to begin with, it is as simple as pat a cake, baker's man. And they're going to just listen. And then you're going to say it together, over and over, until they can say pat a cake, baker's man. And then you might do it to the beat of the metronome. So they get the beat, pat a cake, baker's man. And you're really encouraging every single child in the class to speak clearly, not isolating them. They might do it in little groups. You're encouraging everybody, because there are going to be children who cannot do it and who will feel very threatened by being asked to. But we've got to get the speech and language going. We've got to know who's struggling. And you might choose some sort of clapping pattern. Pat a cake, baker's man, bake me a cake as fast as you can. And start with simple pattern and get them to begin with just copying the pattern. Don't even add in the words yet. And you're going to do different clapping patterns over their school life, getting them more and more complicated. So you're going to then clap to the beat of the metronome. So we're all clapping away at 54 beats a minute. And then they are going to be clapping and saying the words and bringing it together. So they're bringing together all those different skills. It's motor sensory integration. We're bringing together speech, we're bringing together motor skills, we're bringing together social interaction if they're doing it in pairs. One of the things we discovered on our travels is that children are actually very effective teachers of other children. And so one of the things you could do if you're teaching is get one class to learn one rhyme, another class to learn the other, and get them to swap and teach each other. I think they will enjoy it, and it gives them a sense of agency, and you can teach them what they're doing, why they're doing it. The more they understand cognitively about what they're doing and why they're doing it, the more empowered they are, the more they buy into it, the better they understand it. There are going to be children who are not going to access this. And if I'm completely honest, I would put every single child through 3 rounds of sound therapy, just standard, bog standard sound therapy for 14 days for every single child from between 4 and 7 years of age. I would want to make sure we just cleared any little niggling problems so that we didn't have this habitual problem with odd little gaps where I can hear people just can't access individual consonants. There are going to be other children where there really are big speech and language problems, and you are either going to need to train up yourselves or you're going to need to bring in a therapist who will sort out with much more aggressive programs getting sound therapy working. But there should be no excuse. We have got to get children's speech and language working. We've got to get to the stage where they can hear every sound in English. It is vital. And the reason it's vital is that I see adults day in, day out, where there are problems with their sound processing, so there are problems with their eye movements. Might not be as severe as dyslexia, but I can see their eyes move all right when they read numbers. When they try to read for meaning and they bring together sound and vision, the disruption to their sound processing disrupts their eye movements. Given 80% of children in this country go through inner ear infection before they've reached 3, it is vital that we make sure every single child has excellent sound processing, that every single child can access the sounds of English before we start asking them to do complex things like reading, bringing together sound and vision. We want to make sure all the individual bits are in place, please. So my manifesto for small children, my proposal, is that by 7 years of age, or at 7 years of age, all children should be screened for sound processing. Somebody should sit down and check there are no problems at all. And that would come after we'd done a 3 years early years programme, getting everybody's speech and language working really well. So between 4 and 7, a really big push in early years should be speech and language. At 7, once we screen them, if there are still problems, we then need to have intensive support to sort out those problems. There will be some children you can't, but for the vast majority, you're going to clear all that sludge of problems. You're going to empower a huge range of people to be able to speak clearly. and process whatever's said to them. They're going to engage in singing and so on. So we're going to need to change the curriculum post-7. We're going to have a much more skilled group of 7-year-olds. Because you're screening every single child and you're making sound processing a really important issue, teachers will have decent notes on those children who have issues and will know how to deal with them. There will no longer be the fight by parents to get some recognition of this problem, because it's all been done proactively. It's a lot cheaper to be proactive because you're going to clear all the problems. It's a lot cheaper and more effective to be proactive because you're then left with a small number of problems which you can then deal with. The teacher can deal with them. I think at the moment there are classes in Britain where absolutely every child has a sound processing problem and the teacher's drowning. If we got it all sorted, we'd have more efficient learners. Let's empower our children. Here are my contact details. Here are the details of where you can get hold of sound therapy equipment. If you're thinking about doing it as a school, then you need to think seriously that we're going to put on a group of children at a time and how to do that. And we need to have a conversation about that. But please do get in touch. Thank you for listening, and I will speak again tomorrow.